KCB Bank Uganda. For people, for better.
Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Bigger Friday, we review the major events of the week, and we have a couple of issues to look at. One, there are concerns about human rights ahead of the next elections. Well, there are fresh concerns about human rights violations and abuses ahead of those elections. Many stakeholders expressing concern about the state of human rights and rule of law in our country. And they're saying that these reports of a new wave of abductions of opposition-leaning people or supporters of the National Unity Platform Party, to be exact, is a cause of concern. Remember, before the 2021 general elections, we had this kind of situations, and this culminated into violence at a certain stage where we actually lost a considerable number of people. So people are concerned about what is happening. And at the center of it all is the Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, because of what he has been posting on his social media handles, to be exact, on X. And people are concerned and asking questions. Who will take him on to be able to stop what is going on? And of course, the party NUP has chosen through its leader to write to some elders from Ankole region and telling them, speak out against what is going on. We have seen human rights activists also expressing concern, and they're saying something needs to be done. So we'll be asking a question: who will intervene and what method can we use? That's one issue we'll be looking at. We know this week the NRM carried out its village leadership elections, and to a large extent they are saying it was successful. And this kickstarts the process that will culminate into election of party flag bearers for different elective positions ahead of the 2026 general election. They conducted this exercise by lining up, and people were concerned about this particular exercise. And indeed, there were some challenges in some regions. In Kabale district, police is investigating a case of someone being killed for not supporting their uncle. And this uncle saw this person lining up behind somebody else. And it is reported that when there was some celebration in the town of the other camp that had won, some people went and killed this particular person, only for his body to be found later on. So there are concerns there about the issue of lining up. Well, the NRM says it is efficient, does not waste time, so it's one of the best methods for them to use in this kind of exercise. It's not clear whether it's the same they are going to use as they're identifying their flag bearers. We'll wait to see what will happen. President Yoweri Museveni took part in this exercise, and he actually says that with the election of the village leaders, it gives NRM a head start. 2,160,000 votes ahead of the casting of the official ballot, because he believes that if all these local council leaders, because each village has 30 people, and the elections were conducted in 72 villages, you get a total of 2,160,000. If they vote for NRM, he will basically require fewer more votes to get a bigger percentage that makes him victorious at the presidential level. Will this be achievable? We'll wait to see. So we'll be asking a question: has the NRM addressed its challenges, and is it moving peacefully towards its primaries, taking into account how these LOC one village chairpersons were actually elected? I have a panel of 4. Let me introduce Honorable Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert, served as deputy head of AMISOM, was Bubulo East Member of Parliament, and was a key player in the constituency assembly. Good evening, Honorable Simon Mulongo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good evening, our dear listeners and viewers. It is so nice to meet colleagues again, some of whom I've spent long without seeing. So thank you for bringing us together.
I think one of the colleagues we are talking about is the Honorable Paul Mwiru, who is a lawyer, NUP member, former Jinja Municipality East MP. Good evening, Honorable Paul Mwiru. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners and viewers.
Now, there are two people making their maiden appearance on this particular platform. One of them has actually been on this show before, but the other version, the shorter version, but on Spectrum Extra, maiden appearance. Let me introduce Mr. Robert Chirenga, Executive Director, National Coalition for Human Rights Defenders. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you. Good evening, Anderson, and good evening, our listeners. It's a pleasure being here.
Last but not least, Mr. Ronald Egesa is a political and business strategist. Good evening, sir. It's a pleasure having you for the first time on the Spectrum Extra.
Good evening, Kenneth. Thank you for inviting me. It is a pleasure appearing before your audience.
All right, my name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. So very quickly, we will begin with the concerns around human rights violations ahead of the next elections. And I want to begin with somebody who is working around these issues on a daily basis, and that's Mr. Robert Chirenga. Very quickly, Mr. Robert Chirenga, you people have been expressing concern about the state of human rights and connecting it to the governance scenario in our country. What exactly is your concern as human rights activists?
Excuse me. Thank you, Anderson. Our understanding today is that civic space in this country is under severe threat. And we find ourselves in a country of contradictions. Contradictions in the sense that we have a legal regime that really stipulates the fundamental rights and freedoms within our constitution. That's under Chapter 4. At the same time, this country has ratified the most number of international human rights instruments. So it's a contradiction that we have all these instruments, we have all these provisions within the law, we have the Human Rights Enforcement Act, we have the act that prevents torture, but we still see these things happening. So it becomes a very big contradiction. Now, ever since we went into a multi-party dispensation, all elections in this country have been contentious, to the extent that there is no presidential election that has ever happened, ever since we joined the multi-party, that is not contested in the Supreme Court. So that shows you that we have a big challenge. Now, human rights defenders who are supposed to be the watchdogs of society to talk about the human rights issues happening in this country are also under serious attack. You saw what happened to journalists. Excuse me. You saw what happened to journalists in the by-election in Kawempe, and you can imagine what is going to happen. You saw what has just happened in grassroots elections, LC1s, where people are battered, not even by law enforcement, but civilians to civilians. So it shows you that really it's a country that makes one step forward and two steps backward in terms of political dispensation is concerned. And this worries everybody. And then you look at the participation of state actors like law enforcement, who clearly show you that they are partisan now, contrary to the UPDF Act, contrary to other instruments that require public servants or even law enforcement officials to be neutral and not to be partisan to these causes. So these are things that worry us as human rights defenders, and we think there's a lot to be done really. Otherwise, what we remain to be categorized, it will be an illiterate, the 21st century illiterates. Not those who can read or write, who can fail to read or write, but those who can fail to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
All right, you've explained the fears that you have, but can you connect these fears to the process that we're about to go into, the election? What would this mean if this trajectory was to continue?
Well, the best you can imagine is that people will withdraw. If you can see the nature of violence that happens, why would you go to risk your life? You may decide, say, well, I'm not going to exercise my right to vote simply because my security is not guaranteed. And therefore, civic space, the right to participate, to involve yourself in terms of decision-making, policies and laws, you withdraw because you cannot elect your leaders simply because your security is not guaranteed. So the best one can do is to withdraw and sit back at home. But remember that you're spending a lot of resources in conducting such an election. So what that means that where you could have prioritized service delivery, the money has been placed into something that is going to be considered as a sham. And that's our biggest fear.
All right. We'll be getting back to you to dig deeper on this particular issue. And most of the complaints, Honorable Paul Muiru, have been coming from the opposition, and to be specific, the political party that you belong to, which is the National Unity Platform Party. Do you share the same fears like Mr. Chirenga here, who comes from civil society, when it comes to how things are turning out when you look at human rights and issues of rule of law ahead of the next elections?
Well, thank you, Kenneth. Actually, I don't only share, but I'm even happy that I've had another voice outside the usual players, raising the red flag about the situation of human rights in the country. Kenneth, the situation in the country is appalling, and it's very disheartening to some of us who studied the law and studied the human rights, because it is a known fact. I think let me underscore these rights we talk about, because I saw in your narrative you intend to you intend to infer that maybe if someone behaves in a certain way, a right can be taken away. The chapter 4 Mr. Chirang talked about of our constitution, it's a whole chapter. It creates rights to be fundamental rights, and these rights are inherent. They are not granted to us by the state. The same constitution creates a duty on every individual and every agent of the state to ensure that there's enjoyment of those rights. My good friend here, Honorable Mlongo, they did a good job when they were in CA and tried to really show that the rights of people are inherent. Once you are born, the rights accrue to you. There are only limited circumstances under which these rights can be withdrawn, where maybe there has been you are going to serve a sentence where the court has pronounced itself about an entity has passed. But even when you look at even the Constitution, and that's why these things are laughable, it clearly prohibits treating people in an inhuman and degrading way. The way the people are supposed to enforce the enjoyment of rights are now the chief violator. As I was coming, I heard your news. You were telling us how the Mo is going to mock human rights by trying to preside over military-civil relations. Maybe what I need to bring out, I was talking to one of...
It's not mocking. There's an event that is going to take place.
That's mockery. It's just in the... It's just in the things they do.
It's in line with the UPDF doctrine of trying to cultivate a relationship between the citizens and the force itself.
Actually, it's a mockery, and it's fallacious for anybody to think that actually maybe he has intentions. Actually, he's being dragged into an occasion. Maybe they just want to do window dressing, to do damage control. But I was informed, actually, one of the street operative there was telling me that you guys, you need to pick interest the way they torture these people. That this is not torture. This is murder. Because they are hitting them on organs. You understand? You were telling me you must interest yourself in what they are doing. That actually, this is not torture. You were telling me that actually, is the point when you hear people say, see, there was torture, there was torture. This is murder. Because we were saying, the way they hit people, they are hitting them on their tissues, on the organs, meaning that they are incapacitating you. They want to decimate someone through killing the organs of these individuals. So for me, I think there is actually nothing to debate. What surprises me is how people have gone to school, who, when you look at them, they look understanding to accept these things take place in society. So for me, I get worried. With a heavy heart, I look at some of the collaborators, the professional collaborators within the government, defending these human rights atrocities. And then one wonders, what type of country do you want to build? Because you can disagree in politics. Like I met my brother Simon Mulonga, and I was happy to see him after a very long time. But I shudder when I see him like coming up to defend. But good enough, he was in CA. And he's the one who made. Actually, I was very happy to see that I'm going to appear with him, and I will be waiting to see what he says about human rights. Because human rights are actually human rights. At least I am on record. When we were in Parliament, remember during the Nevada issue, I moved the motion. I wanted an inquest into her death because there were a lot of stories, and the issue kept on moving. But you see. You see why, for me, this thing also surprises me. When we start even debating human rights, debating Ubuntu, humanity. But I don't know even to say much because I read this is what we studied. We know what it is. We know it is a right. Whether you are NRM or you are DP or you are UPC, if once you are a human being, you have a right. And Ubuntu in us, humanity requires us that you respect the rights of Honorable Mulongo, whether you agree or disagree with it. But you see, but what we are seeing now is the fusion of the NRM party with the state apparatus. And when you relate to the election process now, I've been in all these by-elections. I was in Kawempe. And what was very shocking, we had a meeting with the Electoral Commission before, and I had the benefit of being party to it. We asked the chairman, are you in charge or the army is in charge? Actually, if I was there with Dr. Simba, I went to Bwags and Mastowa. He came there with the phone, and then those military people who were interfering in the electoral process, they thought he had taken a photo. They removed the phone from him. But you see, Dr. Simba, he was the commissioner, done in charge of elections in Uganda. You understand? So that actually, when we're talking from a boardroom, he was just talking, but you see the good man the way he was talking. And doesn't end at him being a good man. But he was ushered into the violence of this election, and then he saw what was taking place. So they are going to use, and as long as there's a fusion of the state, but of first time memorial, the army and the police, they are coercive arms of government in power. But now these ones are using them to achieve something else. But to me, what worries me, you see, what have we lived before if we don't know about humanity? You understand? What is our purpose? Is it about food? Because everybody has gone into the survival mode. That's why I said I was happy when I saw new people talking about these things. But by the time you reach and say, I think maybe just need to surrender, to give up, just go home. People don't mind, because everybody seems to be in a survival mode. People are just looking for food. But the country is up in flames. Because there's no justification. But you see those people of Noop, they put on a cape. If I put on a cape... You are militants. You're behaving in a militant manner. Okay, if I put on a beret and it's a government store, please arrest me under the law. Produce me before a competent court of law. Because what we are not even debating here, what my brother will tell us, under the law. It's good he was under RDC, he was in security, he knows it properly. The law clearly spells out who can effect an arrest. The Constitution talks about people's liberty, the Criminal Procedure Code, the Police Act. It's not that someone worries you on the way, start beating up everybody, and they take you to unknown places. When I received the rising report that someone was saying he had held someone illegally in his house, and he was under his basement. That's an illegal incarceration. You understand? And you see, and here, do you know the problem now? As I conclude, now the problem of the president keeping quiet. In law, there's what we call the principle of agent and then the principle. Now everybody fears even to talk to the president, because they think by him keeping quiet, he has ratified the actions. So nobody in government, because I was talking to one minister, because I got concerned. They said, you cannot just talk and don't know the position of the big man. Once the big man is quiet, maybe he has ratified. you understand? Let alone the teaching us of Runyankore. You understand? Someone was questioning that. Let's not go that and someone said now, the Sava Gavi, the son of the Sava Gavi, was teaching Muganda, Runyankore. What does that mean? And nobody is coming up to give Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703-090-090. We're reviewing the major events of the week. I have a panel of 4 here in studio. So let me bring in the view of Honorable Simon Mulongo. Honorable Mulongo, very quickly, if you can jump in, and we hear your views on this state of affairs, the issues of human rights. You had your colleague there, your friend, your long-term friend, Paul Mwiru, telling you that he wants to hear your view on this particular issue.
Of course, he guesses right, because he knows what he's been saying. It's also questionable. The Honorable Mwiru is a very good, close friend of mine. Whenever I have issues in my home area, my home, he comes to support me, and I also stand by him. We're such close friends.
But when it comes to politics...
he takes his route, I take mine. And not because we're being... he described us in a very different way. I cannot believe to anyone's brains, because I know differences in opinion can go down to the cracks. And as such, I think issues of human rights, I think we should contextualize the accusations. Because Uganda as a democracy, to me, I see it as a security analyst to be a transitional security state. where the transition means that we're evolving and growing. And so these challenges are bound to face us.
40 years later.
Some people have taken 200 years to be where we are. So it's not just about 40 years. It's about how much we're able to cover and to do. And to me, I want to quote a very learned gentleman called Edmund Burke, who is a very highly quoted man, that there can be no liberty without order and no order without authority. So we must exercise these things in a manner that balances the act. And you see, with state leadership, I see how my friends conduct their businesses in their parties. It's so disillusioning that you wonder whether they know the tail and the head. So we in the government, who really took our time to fight for this, have tested a number of paradigms, a number of challenges, and so we take things more seriously, not because that we want to undermine. This government rides on a very clear road of constitutionality. And by the way, I cannot condone human rights violations. And we've made laws, some of which laws we made with Honorable Muiru in Parliament about torture. And as long as you have evidence, as long as you're able to adduce, because I've seen so many cases where government has been taken to court. Say yes, and it is. And sometimes we've lost some cases. But there are many times where people's complaints are baseless and they're thrown out. Independent judicial institutions. So to me, yes, there are isolated cases that we should not accept, we should not condone, but we cannot use that to blanket the entire government, blanket the entire regime as an electoral cycle is. That therefore we have drifted away from human rights, we have drifted away from... And that's why...
Honorable Muiru says everyone almost in the government is silent about what is happening.
What is silent? We are here talking. And I'm here also talking. I don't have to wait for President Museveni to talk. That's wrong. It's a misrepresentation. In fact, the opposition takes advantage of certain isolated instances. Then they begin to blanket and smoke the whole country to look like it is on fire. It is not true. The fact is that, yes, there are isolated instances and we must condemn them. And yes, if there are excesses, we must condemn them. But on the whole, out of the entire 72,000 villages, if you have 3 villages having registered in cases, and then you say the whole country is on fire. I was looking at the media in the U.S. You find about 30 kids being killed every week in the U.S. But here, even if it is less than one person a week and maybe one person for 6 months, it will go up into the air as if the biggest dust you have ever seen. So I would like to really use my very, very sober and gentle understanding and engagement to say this. Let's not inflame things. Let's not exaggerate things. We have institutions that are supposed to check excesses of conduct of our forces.
All right. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll bring in the views of Mr. Ronald Egesa, who has been listening here quietly, and then we'll follow up to look at the responses of the different panelists here on the table on what their colleagues have submitted. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, but remember, you are the lifeline of this show, so do share with us via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. How do we deal with the human rights situation we have in the country as we prepare for the next elections? Don't go away, we will continue after this. Well, this is Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. 4 panelists in studio: Honorable Paul Muiru, we have the Honorable Simon Mulongo, Mr. Robert Shirenga, and now coming on the microphone is Mr. Ronald Egesa, who is a political and business analyst. Strategist. Sorry for that. But Mr. Egesa, let's hear your view on the situation that we are in. You heard from your colleagues on the table talking about the human rights situation, the implications for the next election process. But also the biggest question we are asking, how do we deal with this kind of situation? What's your take on this situation?
Okay, so like I said, as a strategist, I start with ecosystem analysis. So I just want to paint a picture of what the ecosystem is in Uganda today. You have 3 arms of government. And in painting this picture, there are 2 assumptions that I'm making. The first assumption being that institutions take the character of their chief executives. So when I talk about the judiciary, my views are largely informed by the character of the head of the judiciary, the executive, the character of the head of the executive, and the parliament or the legislature, the character of the head of the legislature. That is the first assumption, not assumption, but the first premise of my statements. The second thing is I operate on the balance of probabilities. So when I say the executive is largely this, I'm meaning that, there is sufficient data to warrant me saying that on the balance of probabilities, over 50% supports the assertion that I'm making. So, having put those two down, now I'll give you my analysis of what the current political ecosystem is in the country today. Number one, you have an overreaching and overzealous executive. Like my colleagues have mentioned, this overreaching and overzealous executive is now abusing and misusing the institutions of the state, the coercive arms of the state, to play politics. So then you turn to the second arm of government, the legislature. You have an impotent and incompetent legislature, which cannot rise to the occasion to defend the citizenry.
Really?
Yeah? Number three, if these two are not going to defend, to help the citizens or to act in public interest, the third arm is supposed to come to the rescue of citizens who run to the courts of law. But now you have a judiciary that is belligerent. That's why you see that even a Supreme Court can, in an election season, can sentence a citizen who has only, whom they have, just because they have not liked the language that the citizen is using. This is a belligerent judiciary. So now, with these three, an overreaching and overzealous executive, an incompetent and impotent legislature, and a belligerent judiciary, the citizens are on our own. We are on our own. So let's walk into the 2026 general election season knowing that we are walking into fire. So we should get the gear that we need to protect ourselves when you walk into a fire. We need to be prepared. I don't really think I can sugarcoat it. I'm just stating it as it is. So we should get the protective gear that we need for us to walk into fire and come out alive. We need to do our calculations and know, okay, the judiciary will not come to our rescue. The parliament has gone to sleep. The executive is using the institutions, the coercive arms of the coercive organs of the state, to play politics. I have stopped watching news on local TV. I've stopped listening to local radio. Why? News especially. Why? Because I just don't understand what the UPDF is doing at the NUP headquarters. When did it become the function of the National Army to begin policing political parties? We really need to be serious as a country. Yeah. When Honorable Miru says some people behave as if they didn't go to school, I think it's just being diplomatic. We are behaving in a very primitive manner. You cannot have a national army putting on a national flag on their sleeve, go and raid a political party office, go and participate in elections. Honorable Simon Mulongo, for example, has told us that it took so many years for some democracies to reach where they are, but they are still suffering with these challenges. But I want to tell you, go next door in Kenya. Have you ever seen, Kenneth, have you ever seen the Kenya National Army, the Kenya Defense Forces, participating in elections? Even on June 25th, 2024, when the youth overran Parliament, did you see the Kenya National Army, the Kenya Defense Forces, coming to patrol the streets of Nairobi? No. It is always the police that takes the what? The hit. And in fact, for them, after the 2010 Constitution, they created what they call an independent police oversight authority to deal with the excesses of the police, because they had learned from their history.
Well, in Uganda's context, we're forgetting one thing, that the police is mandated to actually seek support from the other sister security agencies.
No, that is that is
situation.
Kenneth, that is reading the law as drunkards read the Bible.
But they are now applying the law.
Yeah, you see, drunkards read the Bible by quoting only those things that favor them, without bringing into context how these things are checked. You see, so for the police to come and say we are mandated, what evidence do you have that the police has been overpowered by citizens? Are you telling me that the NUP had overpowered the police to mandate the army to come in? And there is even a laid down procedure how this is supposed to happen. It is even supposed to go through Parliament. Yeah. So we really need to be serious as citizens, and we must understand that the political class has let us down, and the only organ of the government which is not filled with politicians, that is the judiciary. But then the judiciary has chosen, it is under capture. It has chosen to play politics or to be an enabler in various ways. So that is where we find ourselves as a country, walking into the 2026 election season.
All right, thank you for your view there. I need to go back to Mr. Robert Chirenga. Probably having seen all this happening, with that picture, we've been able to understand clearly on the table the view of the different persons. So now, Robert, this kind of situation where we are, Mr. Egesa actually seems to say it's an overreaching executive using state organs, coercive forces to actually play politics. How do we get out of this kind of situation? What do we do as a country to be able to get out of this? But also, if there's anything you want to respond to that has been said on this table, please do.
Thank you, Kenneth, and thank you, my fellow panelists. I think we, as a country, we need to have an honest discussion, and we should not try to sugarcoat. Our participation in such debates is not only a right, but a constitutional obligation under Article 38 that gives citizens the right to participate in the governance affairs of their country through either elected representatives or through civic organization. That is a constitutional obligation. Now, when you look at the way our constitution was crafted, you really see that this is a progressive document. And you really wonder why people do not want to abide by the specific provisions within that constitution that guarantees civil liberties. We have talked about the atrocities that are happening during an election cycle. And unfortunately, these are the non-derogable rights. You see, human rights are not absolute, but there are certain specific rights under Article 44 that are considered non-derogable. In other words, under no circumstances can you restrict on those rights. That's freedom from torture, the right to habeas corpus, freedom from slavery, and a fair trial. Now, we continue to witness unfair trials of civilians being tried in military courts. We continue to see civilians being tortured, dehumanized. We continue to see some people being treated as slaves in different factories that are run by the so-called foreign investors. So if you have all these specific provisions that are considered non-derogable being violated, what would you expect? Now, the danger we are underestimating simply because we think we have instruments of coercion, because those who control the instruments of coercion are basically what defines a state, that they will force you to do what you would otherwise not have wanted to do. You are underestimating the context in which you are operating. That if you go to the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, they will tell you 70% of the population, the 48 or so, are under 30. That demographic dividend that you are underestimating of young people who are unemployed, who are suffering from poverty, who are hopelessness, have nothing to lose. The day they will wake up, no amount of firearms will be able to stop them. So this is the context in which we are, and it's a pity that the very people, freedom fighters, who went to fight and address these challenges are allowing these things to happen. Honorable Simon Mlongo call them isolated incidences. No, they are not isolated. I beg to differ. This is a continuous pattern, and eventually it will be what we call systematic violations. Because now you're going to see it as something very normal. I'll give you an example. We've now seen that riding or driving on the opposite side of it is now a norm. When you look at border riders, it's now common practice that even, I don't know what kind of, you see people defying traffic laws and you wonder, what kind of society is this? Now, if you consider that as isolated incidents every other day, then it is now becoming a norm. It's a custom. It's a practice, and we are going to accept it. So we need to have an honest discussion. If the Europeans or Americans took 200 years to reach where they are, no, we don't have to go through. Because we learn from them. We look up to them and say, well, if it took them 2 years for us, we are going to understand that we have liberties and freedoms which we should all respect. Human rights are inherent They're not granted by the state. The fact that you come to us as a human being, you have these rights. Government's role is to ensure that they regulate on how we enjoy these rights and ensure that where my right starts is where your freedoms also stop. So you should really have an honest discussion.
A honest discussion with who? Between who and who?
In this context,
you're sounding like people who talk about, a national dialogue, but it's very difficult to tell who should convene it, who should attend.
So it is now clear and it's settled that this country is controlled by those who control the instruments of coercion. The instruments of coercion are very clear. We're talking about the police, the military, the intelligence organs. If you have in control of that, that means you are the state. Any other who has no control over the instruments of coercion, then you are not the state.
So the same people who are doing the violations, as you say, should be the ones to convene that honest discussion.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
Yes, because we have, otherwise what's the purpose of this constitution? Why do we have these laws? Well, this is becoming important.
What would motivate them to do that, really, Mr. Robert Chirenga?
What legacy do they want to leave behind? In the first place, why are they in government? Why are you in government? Why are you leading? Why are you in leadership? Why are you holding the positions you are holding? And remember, for every action, there are consequences. It's a question of time. So the question is, why are you in that position of leadership if you are not ready to serve the people? You have a guiding document, you have a clear legal and policy framework in place on how you should govern your people. Can you please follow that? That is the most important thing.
All right. Let's now go to Mr. Mlongo very quickly, and then we'll go to Honorable, Paul Mwiru. Honorable Mlongo, would you want to respond to some of the things that have been put across by your colleagues, specifically when you hear what Ronald Egesa was actually talking about? You would think it's a movie script, but somehow he actually says 50% of people actually will agree with him that that's the situation that we are in.
When somebody calls for an honest discussion, it really also falls here that we must have an honest discussion.
Let's have it true. Be honest.
Because we are going intellectual and to the extent of academics, but not realities. And for example, to say that the executive is overzealous, is coercive, therefore it is a strategic destabilizer, when actually is not supporting his arguments with any data and evidence. When we have assumptions, then you make such a huge statement and it's not supported. For us, if it was in academics, we dismiss you.
Well, so some people say when it walks like a duck.
Yes, but it cannot be, because not everything. We have robots these days, they can walk like ducks, but they're not ducks. So I think that we need to be intellectually honest, to be able to make assumptions and then support those assumptions to score a point. Yes, we can have a strong executive. We may have a strong statecraft agenda, which is actually reminiscent of states. If you go to America now, they are arresting people, deporting them, are doing what? I don't like it at all. But the strength that the state does is to ensure stability, internal coherence, constitutionality, and rule of law.
I know there are so many things we like about America, but
what did you like it?
Because issue, let's be Ugandans. Let's look at the
Of course, but I'm using that because some of the theories we like quoting and examples go to the West. But I'm saying that in Uganda, out of 72,000 villages, you may find that some issues that we're raising now, if we say let's populate the villages and dot them, in a research you can dot actually the villages and find out that it is maybe 10 villages out of 72,000. But of course we cannot underestimate or underrate the impact of such 10 villages. And that's why I want to agree with him to the extent and limited to the fact that, yes, if there are incidents where this overzealousness of the state, of the executive, then there are institutions, there are channels that are established within which you can even challenge. And you can do so. And I want to agree with my human rights colleague that, yes, we should bring the leadership to order and challenge them, because that's what under the Constitution they've been mandated to do. So we call upon them to check on them. And that's what we're supposed to do. The second one is that...
is there anything that you have seen that is not going well that you think the executive actually the leadership needs to attend to.
Yes, starting with the opposition. The opposition are just, I don't know what they're doing. They're fighting and doing. Imagine, these are the people who are supposed to be the governments in the waiting. They have no alternative policies. They are not giving us an image of really potential successors.
That's the problem of the opposition. I'm talking about within the government system.
Yes. We have. One is that the inflation should be brought down to negative. Secondly, we should have the youths who are qualified universities having jobs. Now the percent of employment is still low. Yes, we do have them. So, and I can go on and on and on. The other one is the issue of legislature, to say the rubber stamps. I don't know whether it's a realist pragmatism or that's liberalist ideology. Surely, Parliament has its role under the Constitution. They legislate. They have debated complex laws in this country. They have provided budgets for the government to operate. They have done their best. Of course, they're not holy. They have weaknesses like another. But I can tell you, the parliament in Uganda, given the circumstances, they are much better than what the description is being given here. That they're inept. These are people who are doing their work, against which we're running the affairs of this country. The other one is the issue of judiciary, and you call them that they are that belligerent, often arise when it rules against. You see, and this judiciary you see here has made judgments in this country on matters of order and stability, matters of crime, that people have applauded them. And I've seen the opposition coming up to say, hurrah! The Supreme Court came up to say no civilian in the military court unless otherwise. And people, they're the same people now turning around to say, these are just, can you imagine this? Surely, I think we're being unfair. You know, in England, there was a king who was said to have been more dangerous to himself than the danger of England. And before he died, he said, actually, I've been more judged harshly than I've been harsh to the people of England. And I think some of us are being too harsh for judiciary, to the judiciary, than what it is. So I rest my case to say, what my colleagues are saying about honest discussions, there are so many fora. Government is not just sitting in State House or in Parliament or corridors of judiciary. Even here, where we're engaging, people are listening. People are going to raise issues for and against me, for example, because they're engaged. And I would love them to criticize. So that's not true. Yes, we need honesty, but you did not answer the platform. He just said, let's take them on. And as I wind up also, the issue is, yes, it can be systemic, indeed. Of course, it can be systemic. But the question is, do we have institutions? Do you have legal provisions against each of which we can rush to charge against the people violating them? Do we have institutions? Can we be able to complain? Actually, I want to remind you that government, you know it better than me, that government has been taken to court several times.
All right.
And sometimes they have lost.
All right.
Let's do that judiciously. Why should we rest when we can do it?
All right. Let's now go to Honorable Paul Mwiru. Honorable Mwiru, very quickly, you've heard from your colleagues here on the table, including your good friend Simon Mulongo there. What are your quick thoughts?
I wanted first to debunk some of the distortions he was putting across. You see, it is a known principle of law that to convict one innocent person, you'd rather release 100 criminals. So for you to say, you see, these are certain cases where they are, you know, human rights are universal, and they accrue to an individual. Simply because they are not violated, there are not many violations. Our point is that they should not violate any right. You understand? Any life matter. Every life matter. That's what we are saying. But two and most important, actually, even us in National Unity Platform, we are not saying that we are above the law. What we are saying, that the law is sufficient. If I engage in the commission of an offense, like the way your boss thought I should be charged of treason, he arrested me in Arua, charged me of treason, incarcerated me for more than a month, I got bail, he made me move to court for more than a year, then later, the matter signed up to now, I'm a treason suspect.
You see?
I don't know.
You're free.
No, I'm not. I'm not. It was a trumped up charge, because they had no evidence, they just left it in abeyance. But you understand? That's what we are saying. That if you think members of the Nationality Platform are criminals in any way, you understand? Go ahead and use the law as is, and then try us. Then the other issue we're talking about equality before the law. Because on the other hand, as they are curtailing us, for national profit to do an activity, you must go to police, you must go to the army, then the CDF. Nobody's taking a decision. You understand? But when they want to do an activity as NRM, they just can't do the activity. They have been engaging in fallacies that when a NUP organizes an activity, people die. The police's report, it showed you that we lose 4,000 people annually, an average 10 to 12 people per day. You understand? We want to see that force. They use that NUP headquarter in that direction. But two, and most important, my brother, Mr. Gessa referred to the Supreme Court. The work of the courts is to make, like the Constitutional Court, to make declarations. The Supreme Court of Uganda went into the annals of history to say that this is unconstitutional, but you can do it like this to have these people. Because now what the crisis we are having, the social crisis in the country, the Attorney General's chamber now, they are trying to craft a law to fit into the advice of the Supreme Court on how to violate civilians' rights. You understand? What we wanted from them was a declaration. That's what they were supposed to stop. They were acting as if they are arbiter, but it's what now the government is speaking, and to the extent that if they want even now to enact a law, even take back Dr. Message now, they don't have a retrospective effect. These problems you cause now. That's why, by the way, when we Ugandans, first you keep on glorifying the military and the army. We know numbers. If we were to share the numbers of the police and the army, if the youth whose future has been robbed, that they have nothing at stake, decide to say that enough is enough, and because that would mean that they will have lost faith, trust in all these institutions. Actually, now let me tell you this: you can't tell your boss. Before, if there was anything, people would go recourse to court because they know there's going to be a judiciary. In law, as I summarized, there's what we call the Christian theory of law. That whoever, if you go to fight a government with a gun, if you take over, you become the government of that time. But if you don't succeed, it is treason.
Arrest you.
It is treason. Now the judicial officers you saw in the Dr. Vesige case, the judge properly reasoned in our ruling that actually Dr. Vesige qualifies for bail. Then she said she denied him bail, saying what remained was politics. So as I was talking to one of the judicial officers, he said, you collect your politics. We shall make the correct decisions. He said, you saw what happened to our friend, Justice Vuchiro. She ruled against the Mubadje, his name was Mubadje. Then when it came to her confirmation as acting judge, they had stayed her confirmation. It took her to go and plead. You understand? Now she was confirmed and redeployed. That all acting judges, now I'm telling you, this course we're talking about, there's no acting judge who will make a decision against the government of Uganda now, whether it concerns human rights, because everybody is in the survival mode. But what I want to remind you, we are not also very foolish. Today, everybody can be looking for food, but if there's change of government, they normally issue legal notices. You understand? The new government will issue legal notice number 1, and tell everybody to apply. You understand? Because you said at the end of something must come to an end. You see, you even wonder. You walk around, you meet colleagues like Dr. Molo, they talk very well, but you wonder, what is the problem? You see, in life there are 3 things: knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. It is very difficult to find someone when he has all the 3. When someone is knowledgeable, he understands the wisdom. Understand is putting into practice. You understand what actually you think. Because we all agree, whether in government or in opposition, that actually we need to move, we need to take the correct decision. When you go to China, the discussions are no longer about governance. They are about technology. People meet to discuss technology. You want to see how to do an upgrade of a technology. But we cannot be meeting all along. I've met you for now 20 years. But whenever we are discussing governance issues, when shall we meet?
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll get a feedback from the listeners, wrap up the discussion around that topic, and also move on to our next subtopic. Stay tuned, Radio 1. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, reviewing the major events of the week. The panel, Honorable Paul Mwiru, lawyer, NUP member, and former Jinja Municipality East Member of Parliament. I know he's going to run again in 2026. Mr. Robert Chirenga, Executive Director, National Coalition for Human Rights Defenders. Mr. Ronald Egesa, political and business strategist, and Honorable Simon Mulongo, governance and security expert, who served as deputy head of AMISOM, as Bobulo East Member of Parliament. He was also in the Constituency Assembly. I've also remembered, going by the brief introduction which was given by Honorable Paul Mwiru, that you are indeed among those people who kick-started the institution of the RDC in this country. You were one of the RDCs in this country. Gentlemen, we have a lot of comments coming in from the listeners. I'm going to sample some of them, and then we'll go around the table to get your responses. But if there is anyone who wants also to chip in about what the colleagues have actually said, you'll be free to do that. But let me begin with this comment. George, listening in from Bunga, says, in most cases, logical leaders tend to distance their families taking part in leadership of the country. Why? To avoid incidences of impunity. General Muhoozi does because every day is afraid to condone negativity, fearing to come to the outcome. I wonder whether also Rwandan President's son, who is Ame, takes pride like General Muhoozi does when his father is cheering on. Well, we don't know whether the father actually does cheer on, but some people think because he's silent, he could be in support of what is happening. Just an assumption. We have a comment coming in from Mawa Amaza, listening in from Moyo West. That's in the from Moyo in the West Nile region. He says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. The current government is very dangerous compared to the past governments. They have totally lost on why they went to the bush. Anyway, they went in order to get rich, and they have succeeded. I wonder, do they want to finish up those who knew their secrets? God bless Uganda. Then we have another comment. Good evening. People who support the cruelty of this government are not different from religious people. Someone who treats you like a dog and turns you into a beggar can't wish you heaven, just like the government can't change your life if that's what you are waiting for. Wake up. By the time Amin was just wrongfully accused by Museveni of conducting a smear campaign against him while he was in power, do you know why? Amin and these people have never come out and bragged about how they were torturing and abducting people. And that's a comment that comes in from Orlando. We have another comment here. The best news will be a day when the government cancels any form of elections in the country and declare no multi-party democracy. Elections are a sham and cause of division, hate even within NRM. Imagine people still lining up behind a candidate in a technological era. So backward. NRM does not even allow parties to campaign freely. Just save our taxpayers' money and we live in peace. Otherwise, I envision violence and a lot of torture by security forces. That's another comment there. We have another one. Thanks, Alison and the panel. Lorenzo from Kampala here. In Uganda, human rights is just a talk. We have institutions like that headed by Wangadia, which doesn't function. We have CDF, who even Parliament summoned and to ask him about the statements he usually puts on X, and they called them clowns. Opposition supporters are tortured, and those who commit such torture even brag. Then we have people like Honorable Mulongo, who are paid to sanitize the wrongs. Cry for my beloved country. I have no evidence that Mulongo is paid to sanitize, but we will hear from him. Daniel of Iganga, the way the CDF is doing things is as if he's above the law. He can do whatever he wants at any time. Then we have another comment. Abe Kwizera, listening in from Kampala Kutano. Kawempe Kutano, he says, recently Mr. Patrick Onyango, the Kampala Metropolitan Police spokesperson, was asked why General Muhoozi Kainerugaba was holding Eddie Mutwe in the basement and being heavily tortured. He said that he has no authority to add any statement on what his superior, General Muhoozi, had posted on his X-handle. My question is, when did UPDF or its commander become the superior institution or individual of Uganda Police as an independent institution? No wonder recently the SFC attacked Lubowa police station and beat the police officers very properly. Then we have another comment. Let's go to already done elections in the USA. President Trump was provided with state security during campaigns. In Uganda, only NRM has state security when other parties become are concerned by creating their own security. They are taken as rebels, hooligans, etc., beating, torturing people in the opposition. Actually, during the elections, each presidential candidate is given a team of security personnel. So if you put it in the context of Trump, indeed, even here in Uganda, presidential candidates. The question is, what's the use of the security personnel around these opposition presidential candidates? Bobby in Kampala, from what he's saying, Honorable Mulongo doesn't have a clue of what academics is all about. Blaming a hounded opposition cannot be an excuse for bad governance. There is so much evidence of bad governance in the executive in Uganda. We have another comment. Thank you, Spectrum Xtra. I also want to appeal to NRM cadres to stop their nonsensical rhetoric of it took America 100 years to get where it is now. Then what have you learned from America if you cannot avoid the same issues that were affecting America then? Do you still need more 60 years in power to make Uganda a better country? That's a comment from Medad listening in from Bukoto. There are so many other comments coming in very quickly, but let's get the responses. Let me begin with you, Honorable Paul Mwiru.
Before he comes in, I wanted to respond to the issues they raised.
Okay.
Kenneth. I'll just go around the table. I'll start with the submission of my brother Robert Chirenga. At one point, he did mention that we have a history of presidential elections that have been contested in the courts. That is not actually very accurate. The 2011 election was never challenged in the Supreme Court. But then I'm not coming to discount your point, but to actually strengthen it. What happened is that President Museveni, after realizing that the 2006 elections brought him a lot of bad PR, he tried to change tactic and decided to simply buy the 2011 election. So by trying to buy the election, he realized that it actually hurt the economy.
How much?
Yeah, I will actually remind you.
What do you mean buying? There was casting of ballots, Mr. Gesa.
Okay, I'll help you to put it into context.
Can you put it in context?
That election was more
The
bold than
election,
stolen.
Let
the
me put
election.
it in
Yeah,
context.
I'll give you a few figures. That is the time when the office of the Prime Minister was used, for example, to construct houses for 22 chiefs in northern Uganda. There was a lot of money poured in the election. The 2011 election, you remember the Bank of Uganda governor saying that he made a mistake by listening to the executive. Yeah, they duped him. Actually, he said he was misled that the money was going to be used for something else, and it was then used for something else. So what happened in the aftermath of the election was inflation. That is the high inflation rates actually resulted in the walk-to-work protests that were led by Dr. Kizza Besigye. So after realizing that buying the election was quite detrimental to the economy, and yet one of the pillars of President Museveni's regime has been claiming that he has properly managed the economy. So he discovered that was playing with the fire. He chose to go back to his tried and tested tactics of using violence. So that's why you see it is easier for him to say, no, I would rather deal with human rights violations, during election season rather than going down the other route, which is the alternative. He tried it and he discovered it is, quite dangerous. So now I'll put that aside and then I'll move to the next point, which I wanted to talk about. You asked Mr. Chirenga that who is supposed to convene this dialogue that he was talking about. He said he called for an honest dialogue.
Honest discussion.
Yes. This discussion, I think what he didn't bring out properly is that what we need is a citizen agency. We have a lot of, the population, a big chunk of the population that is either politically disillusioned and are not interested in political discussion. Just like I told you, even me, I no longer want even to follow some of the stories making headlines in the news. Why? It's because you can get so angry, you might even think of going to the bush, but there are no bushes anymore in Kampala. So, because nobody loves this country more than the other. This country belongs to all of us. But for some people to behave as if the country belongs to them, it is a kingdom, that is a reincarnation of the Chwezi dynasty. These kind of things, this is a kind of talk that we need to tame. So we must encourage citizens to lead a citizen agency. The citizens must get more involved in this discussion. So I think when you're asking him who is supposed to convene this dialogue, it is supposed to be the citizens of Uganda who are actually the supreme authority in the land, according to the law. Then number three, there was an issue that Honorable Mulongo raised about the way I referred to Parliament as incompetent and impotent. But then I would ask a very simple question: why is he not enthusiastic to go back to Parliament like he was in the 6th or 7th Parliament? And he was even in the CA. He will even tell you, if you corner him privately, he will tell you that the quality of debate and also the size of Parliament was not as bastardized as it is today.
Yeah? Are you speaking for me?
No, okay. We will have a different conversation off air, and I will ask you this question: whether you would consider going back to Parliament today, because the time that is allocated to one member of Parliament to articulate issues is no longer there, because you have a very big number of Parliament. The size of Parliament is bloated. That is number one. Number two, the quality of Parliament. I don't really need to prosecute this matter. It is out there in the public square. And then there's another issue to do with saying that America this, America that. We are not even going to America. For me, I submitted using an example of Kenya. I said, now you go to Kenya. Is the national army in Kenya engaging in partisan politics? The answer is no. So we cannot now divert our conversation and start saying, no, America is being, the executive is becoming so strong, the executive orders left, right, and center, but we are saying, no, in the East African community. Why should we compare ourselves to democracies that are far away from us in terms of time, age, and geography?
Right.
So then finally, let me just make one final point. There was the issue of people saying that so many people are fearing to speak, they're fearing to do their jobs. This is an issue of imposter syndrome. So many people occupy their offices but do not actually know what the officers are required to do. For me, at this point, I want to give my flowers to the head of the Uganda Human Rights Commission this week, when she came out and said, look, the person who has been tortured should be released. Yeah? This is what he's supposed to do. You're not supposed to play politics. You're not supposed to look over your shoulders to see who is saying what. You stand your ground. Political bullies are like any other bullies. They can be told off. They need to be confronted by people who are solid and firm. We need people who are firm to occupy positions. There have been people in the police who say, no, I will not tolerate this kind of behavior. There has been a joke around the security circles. One officer who slapped an IGP. These are things which are in the political corridors. And said, I will not take this kind of nonsense. We are not a political institution. Yeah, so people should actually perform their jobs. Right. And finally, Honorable Miru, you said the NRM does whatever they want. They don't allow you to do what you want. I will remind you, this is politics. You must fight for your agency. Benavides, the politician, said, to my friends, everything and anything. To my enemies, the law. Even if you come to government, you'll do the same. You can see the events in the NUP. Honorable Chagulanyi will read the law to Honorable Mpuga. But you will not read it for others who are in his corner. That is how politics works.
So, all right. Let's hear from Honorable Mwiru and then go around.
I wanted to underscore one thing, because there's a narrative which has been thrown around to make it look like the National Unity Platform is a lawless organization. That actually, you see, they have got the society they have created, and then they tend to say, because the society they have created, they normally used to describe us as hooligans,
unlawful society.
Unlawful society. But I want to say that that's the society you have created. That's one of your achievements. But even beside creating such type of society, we are saying we are lawful people. If in any way government thinks that they want to bring us to book, we are available. They can reach out to us. They can use police to apprehend any of us. But what we are not going to allow, which will be over our dead bodies, is to continue abducting, torture, and kill people the way they have been doing. Because you may call it torture as an operational method, but for us we call it now murder, because we have evidence that actually this has been taking people's organs. So I wanted to make that very clear, that the time is going to come when we need to call, when we shall make clarion call to all our supporters that as your leaders, please, you have nobody, you are on your own. Raise up and claim your space and base. I thank you.
All right, Honorable.
I think we should admit where there are issues. NUP should admit then a crisis, constant crisis. NRM, we have our own issues. But see how we organized our elections.
You're in a severe crisis.
And there's no severity on that. We have had a constant, repeated elections. We have institutions that are functional, that we can have local council people. We now have flag bearers across the country. They will contest with others, and we shall move on until we shall have a delegates conference. We shall have the final results of how flag bearers are going to contest with others. And we would like to see this happen. Not that I wish it so much that you do, but why not? You should copy us and do it, where you have some semblance of organization. I want to also say that, you see, when people are given an opportunity to speak their minds, they always tilt it to the side they want. And I'm happy that he has said...
Is that what you're about to do?
Nope. Beware of this. You know, when Noop says, it's murder, it's what... You see, they're forgetting that in the activity, if you're growing sugarcane in Chinja, nobody will be even doing anything to you. But the fact that we came to this, you are now into the politics. Then you dance. We all dance the politics in one or the other. So sometimes rough edges, sometimes smooth and so on. World over. And people who are bringing in Kenya to say as an example, you see, Kenya's history is totally different from us. Totally different. They've not had issues like we had. They never had 66 crisis. They never had 71 coups. They never had the Bush War and so on. So there's no you can say that we can just be. We're totally different.
And
we have our own. Yes, if it was going tomatoes, you wouldn't be having these issues. They were there. So once you join politics, the game changes, and so are the dance strokes that you make. So I think that not that everything that we are saying should be welcomed, we should be able to criticize them, but at the same time we should accept the fact that when you're on the road, you get challenged. You meet oncoming traffic, or those who are going in the same direction with you, border is trying to challenge your sight and so on, but that's how the roads are.
Okay. So he's saying when we take power, we should treat them exactly the way they're treating us.
Well, I don't know, because you're treating your colleagues just like you think you're accusing us of. There are many things you're also doing in the inter-platform.
All right, we have more comments coming in. Patrick in Mobende rising and says, thanks for the program. I have listened painfully to that gentleman called Molongo. What is he defending? This government that's doing all the wrong things, abduction of civilians and keeping them incommunicado, masterminding the battering of civilians like we all saw in Kawempe North by elections, obscene corruption. Come on, man. We are not blind to all this. This government has outlived its welcome. That's Patrick in Mobende. Mr. Mlongo, dishonesty is painful to listen. As a sycophant holding on to the milk card, he can go on singing Kumbaya, but in reality is those violations are not right and paint a bad picture for the NRM. I guess Honorable Mlongo can't wait to praise the CDF for bragging about detaining someone in his basement and teaching him a certain language. Emmanuel in Manafa. Honorable Mlongo, when you give MPs 100 million to pass the budget in Honorable Lydia Wanyoto's words over Easter, how can you not claim that Parliament isn't rubber stamp? Just to give you one, there are so many examples, but because of time, I can't list all of them here. That's Emmanuel in Manafa. Good evening. Can I tell Honorable Mlongo that there are NUP supporters arrested in November 2020 but have never been charged in court? Then we have another comment. Okitwi Joseph listening in from Kyambogo. In fact, I love the topic at hand. Human rights violation is not a rumor in Uganda. I thought picketing is a constitutionally provided for. I wonder why the police and the army must come and tear gas someone demonstrating peacefully with only a placard, arrest and torture students and citizens. This has extended to universities as well. Shame upon the NRM cadres who are only appeasing the regime. Thanks to Mr. Egesa, but Mr. Mulongo sounds like one of the cadres. I'll give you an opportunity again.
Yes, of course, I am a cadre. I'm an NRM member. I'm not a spokesperson of NRM, but I speak what I think our government has been able to do and is able to be doing right now. And the fact that some of those comments came from colleagues who think other than NRM, It's okay. I mean, that's what the politics is about. You can support your side, and I support my side. And, of course, the allegations, I'm very firm about human rights. Issues of violations are not acceptable. We have the laws, we have the rules, and we also have institutions that can actually be approached once such violations are evidently availed to those institutions, courts of law, human
Why
rights.
don't you take us to those organizations? Because you have the courts, you understand, and you take us there.
But
why do you want us to go there?
When you took government to court, we did not take you there. When the lady chairperson of Human Rights Commission,
does what they're using the word kidnapping and detaining people for some time, people turning out or getting out with wounds, etc. Does it, bring out a good picture?
I've just said there's nothing like picturing here. The issue is that if somebody has evidence that there are violations,
picture, because these things are in public
yes,
domain.
you can't just picture, because now you're picturing it in your head. I don't know what you're seeing. You're just telling me what you want me to hear. Yes. I don't know if I'm seeing what you're seeing, but the principle is simple, and the practice. If there are violations, the institutions, either courts of law, human rights, like a Human Rights Commission, and I'm happy somebody reminded us that the Right Honorable, Her Lordship Maria Mwangadia, did actually order that somebody be released. Mutwe, is it Mutwe?
Eddie Mutwe.
Eddie Mutwe. Yes. So, in other words, for you to ask me to take you there when you have been going there yourselves, and many times you have won, and now you're even bragging that they arrested you, took you to court, but now you're free here, and so on. So, Honorable, why should I take you there?
I want to go to Mr. Chirenga. Very quickly, Mr. Chirenga, you called for honest discussion on this matter. Now, one thing that the NUP party president has done is write to some elders in Ankole, and he wants them to be part of a honest discussion where they tell the government, I don't know why he specifically chose Ankole, maybe you can also help us to understand if you can, to tell President Museveni and his son that enough is enough. Do you think probably this is likely to generate the kind of honesty discussion you talked about?
I'm afraid not, because it's not the first time that elders have appealed to him. Sir Richard Henry Kaijuka spoke to him.
Is one of the people on that list?
When he was launching the book by Joan Kategaya, the widow to the late Right Honorable Kategaya, the kind of legacy they would want him to leave. The honest discussion I'm talking about here is a discussion by those that control the instruments of coercion. And they are known. There are not so many. The instruments of coercion here are controlled by a small clique of people, and they know it. And they are part of the historical mission of liberating this country.
Are you sure?
35, 40 years ago. They are part of the historical mission of it. And therefore, those 4 or 5 characters should be able to come and say, what kind of country do we want to live in? What kind of legacy do we want to live in this country? Those are they are the ones to address this question. Because
maybe this country is better than the bush. As it is now, it's better than the bush.
It has made some progress. It has made some progress, but I see as it is. Look at the historical mission of NRA.
We know the people who went in the bush. One of them is President Yoweri Museveni. He led the group.
Yes.
Who are the other 5?
Well, the other...
Maybe the other is his brother, Salim Saleh.
Salim Saleh, others might have passed on since. But right now, we know who controls the instruments of coercion. General Muhoozi controls the instruments of coercion in this country. And if he deploys, he deploys. Nobody else can challenge him. Not even senior cabinet ministers can challenge him. You are aware of that. So those are the kind of people I'm talking about. The state. What constitutes the state in this country is that class of society that controls the instruments of coercion, that would deploy military to even take over parliament, would control the military to take over the institutions like the courts of law, and nobody can make a sense. That is the group that really has to reflect on what it is doing and say, this is how we want to change society. If we don't have that discussion and continue taking this society for granted, I refer to the demographics that have since changed, that we have a young population who have no understanding of even your historical mission, that have only seen one president. He has been the past president, the present, and the future president. That group has nothing to lose. The day they will have to say they are waking up and say enough is enough, no amount of intimidation or weapon will stop them.
All right, Spectrum X on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. When we return, we'll shift our gears and look at our other topic, which is what transpired in the NRM village elections and what this means for this political party going forward. Remember, President Yoweri Museveni has said, going by the number of leaders who were elected, 2,160,000, he's assured of already those votes because these leaders are likely to vote for him when the elections come. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90 will continue after this break. All right, now thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. We have just been discussing concerns around human rights and the violations that have been going on ahead of the elections, and consensus on the table, apart from maybe Honorable Mlongo, who thinks things are going the right direction.
Isolated.
Others are thinking that indeed there is need to seriously discuss issues.
Excuse me, when did you take a roll call? That's a qualitative argument which cannot be quantified.
Okay, let me give you an opportunity.
Did you actually count our votes?
We were listening
for you to do that.
We were listening.
I think the viewer, the listeners, will definitely know where this engagement is going. But for you to announce,
going by the comments
to say,
going by the comments that I read,
that going by this, what was the basis?
Going by the comments.
What is your methodology?
Going by
the last speaker.
Going by what you stated on the table and even the comments that came in.
No. What I'm saying that you as a moderator, don't be described by my brother Gessa to be what he described Parliament, because what methodology are you using to begin, balancing on one side or the other?
There are no sides. Actually, human rights have no.
Exactly.
They have no sides.
That's better, but
actually,
that's
the way he has put it.
So where is
we have all agreed that violation cannot define.
We agreed one.
Apart from me, who was saying that in some instances, yes.
We agreed that violations of human rights are against the law of this country. I also agreed with that. Secondly, I also agreed that we have put in place laws, including torture, laws to do with torture, that it is wrong to torture a suspect or anyone. Then we have also agreed that there are institutions and processes in this country that you can make use of, which I stood to strongly. And that doesn't mean that...
so let's follow those laws.
Yeah, then follow the laws. Yes, follow the laws.
Let me ask Honorable Mlongo, where do you get power to make those conclusions? But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on with
I was helping the moderator.
I think you...
Mr. Gessa, you lead us in this next segment of discussion.
He has carefully and tactfully dodged your question because he diverted you. You see, your question was on NRM polls, and he avoided it carefully.
And I want you to lead us there. You followed closely what was happening in the NRM village elections and the outcome, and of course we've heard from the party leader who actually thinks that they are better prepared now. They already have a head start when it comes to the number of votes they are likely to get. And going by their structure, they have set up a system that is likely to help them to actually safeguard their vote going forward.
Like they say, the devil is in the detail. So he says that this exercise has been smooth. We may agree with him to a large extent because they chose a method which was, which was meant to do damage control. Lining up behind people, it's a very straightforward method. It has its own drawbacks, disadvantages of people witch hunting one another. Like you gave us a case of one statistic in Kabale where somebody is being witch hunted. Because the only reason they got to do this is because they saw who he voted. Yeah. If it was a secret ballot, they wouldn't have known. Now, I would want to applaud the NRM for doing that, for going for that method at that level, because otherwise it would have been disaster.
What do you mean?
If they had gone to secret ballot, people would be printing down ballots. Like we saw in the first mass primaries they tried in 2010. Was it around 2010? Yes. When people were printing ballots here in Australia and every candidate was printing their own ballots, it was a massive rigging exercise. It was actually a rigging bonanza. Now, unfortunately for them, I'm applauding them for using this method at the lowest level. Unfortunately for them, they cannot carry it through up to the highest level.
What have you heard?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that they will not be lining up at all levels up to the National Delegates Conference. At a certain point, they have to go to the secret ballot. Now, that is where the problems are going to come from, and that is the detail. And you are going to see people trying to manipulate the NRM primaries. And you will still have these wrangles coming up in the NRM primaries and all that. And why are we even discussing the NRM primaries? Because the truth of the matter is that on the ground, the NRM primary is a mini general election, or it is a mock general election in Uganda. Why? Because the opposition is weak and feeble. It does not have a presence in the entire geography of the country. So you don't have last mile representation of opposition parties in all parts of the country. So the NRM election gives us a picture of what is going to come out of those, the remote areas, the remotest of all areas in the country, with the exception of what is within the central region around Lake Victoria, or the Lake Victoria and the Choga Basin, which of course has the highest number of voters. But of course, President Museveni was very strategic. He gerrymandered the whole country, and he ends up with a majority in parliament. The majority is representing a minority population. For a long time after the 2021 election, the profile picture on WhatsApp was a map of Uganda showing the demographics, the voters, and the parliamentary representation, which clearly showed you that the majority population is represented by a minority. The 56 NUP MPs who come from the central region, for instance, represent almost half of the voters of the country. But why are we in this particular case? It's because the opposition is weak and feeble. They have no strategy. They have not come up with a strategy to say, look, as the NRM is going into the primaries, why don't we have a strong UPC also doing its primaries in an area where an area that they can describe as their own stronghold? Why don't we have FDC cutting out a part of the country where they can have a stronghold, so that NRM can be taken, given a ride for its money? But they have left NRM to enjoy the rest of the country while the opposition concentrates in the urban areas. So we are just doing more of the same and expecting different results. Right. So we don't expect that the opposition will change anything. What we have seen in the NRM primary is just giving us a picture of what is going to happen in the general election, same for the urban areas.
All right, let's go to Honorable Mwilu. Honorable Mwilu, your quick take. I guess actually things are for you as the opposition. You are weak and feeble. So the NRM, kudos to them. They are doing something that you can't even dream about.
Well, thank you. Of course, the choice of words, I want to assume they are contextual, and they depend on depth of the use of the words. But if I was to give them the literal meaning as used as I understand them, they have no accuracy. To the extent that first, he doesn't know our strategy. You cannot say we don't have a strategy when he doesn't know our strategy.
Your strategy, he says, is concentrate on urban areas.
He's talking about urban areas, but I had made this known to him before that actually we are even supposed to meet the police one of these days, because whenever you want to go out, the issue later, you can't go to carry out. I don't know how he expected us to go out and conduct the activities when actually we're not allowed. We have a roadmap, which we shared with the doctor, and then say you can't actually move to go and conduct.
But your message is also not there in the rural areas. You see, in Kampala, you don't.
No, our message is there.
No, in Kampala, you don't do those things, but you win. Why? In Jinja, in the urban areas, you win. Why? Because the population is up to date with what you are discussing, actually, and the ills of the government.
Actually, yes. To the contrary, like I'll give an example of Soga sub-region. In the next election, opposition won, and Uganda, and also moving in other areas, and our strategies which we're going to go and actually implement. But going to the issue about the NRM, first I want to condemn the human rights violation which marred the exercise.
We finished that.
No, now we're talking in terms of NRM.
Where did you see the violations?
The NRM. Like in our area, people died.
You mounted for us?
Yes. I'm condemning the human rights violations.
In the elections?
Yes, which we saw.
In the NRM village elections?
Yes, in the NRM village elections. Because there is some area where I saw people just beating up, but I don't know, I was wondering now, what is the voting? But two, and most importantly, you see, there has been a paradigm shift. You see, the other time when they wanted to, I think they wanted to vulgarize the process, where they said there is no register. Whoever turns up, just go and vote. This time around, they try to come up with a voter register. Because a register is a cornerstone of an electoral process. Because without a register, there's no you can say there were elections. So what they had the other time, it was sham. Because there's no way you would challenge. Because people would line up, and actually, once you disagree, you don't even have no recourse. You bring people who voted as you are disputing. But this time around, they can be plus to them that there was a register. So in some places also, they're also disregarding again the register. And I think I saw on Mr. Tang and Dr. Tango doing, someone trying to point to that. Actually, if once you disregard the register, then there is no process. But at least you are seeing them that they were now coming from the other problem of the other time, the mischief. They were addressing the mischief, that they were actually falsification. And I think all of them were as the issue of NRM was printing ballot papers, they were actually also printing. As they're also printing data forms, they're also printing data forms. So at the end of the day, the falsification of results actually was also carrying the day in some areas. But now that people are lining up behind the candidates, I was following like in my area, very keenly, because someone went on the line with his candidate, the people also went to the other, and then he lost. You understand? Because there's no one would falsify, because they would count. And you saw someone would walk away. You saw in Ruka.
It's a good system.
You see in some, yes, you see, because people had lost hope in these electoral processes, because they would always falsify the result. You saw that the former Minister of Presidency, Honorable Mbai, I don't know Western Bayo. I don't know what made they had to leave our village to go and contest as another child of certain village. Another woman was saying that now that I haven't defeated you at another child level, I don't think we have an MP material, because she got more than what she asked for. Because even as a politician, you must learn that if you are an MP, you must know how to relate to his people. You cannot even leave your village, because like a Nabachala, she's a very, very critical position in those villages. Because the women normally go to the Nabachala, tell their issue. You're not always there.
All right.
So by and large, the violence at this level was not as it was the other time.
Okay.
Though in those now he can use this word isolated instances.
All right.
he can use this word now.
All right.
I saw, but my prayer is that I don't wish even then under the NRM primaries that there should be violence. So we wish you well.
All right. Let's bring in Robert very quickly. Your quick take on the manner in which the NRM village elections were conducted.
Thank you, Anderson. To be honest, I'm quite disappointed, and I would really want to advise our Dr. Simon Mondo to really advise the party, the ruling party, because what they do really seems very disorganized, and I can't comprehend it. Here is a party that has resources, both financial and human resources. You have a whole professor of history, Dr. Tango Doi. He taught me history, African history and European history. Why you can't make use of technology to have an updated register done on not to wait until an electoral cycle is coming up. You have control over the instruments of coercion. The army, the police, you never see the army disorganizing other political parties other than the opposition. So these other political parties should be looking up to the NRM as a ruling party, as the one that is doing things in a better way, because you have all the human and financial resources. You have the technologies available for you. You can update your register. But when we start seeing you doing things in a crude manner, 40 years.
But if it is strategic crudeness?
Well, then I don't see how to work for them, because at the end
to them in power.
That's how the violence is coming. You heard people complain about the registrars importing voters from other villages. That kind of violence is really not something that we should look up to as people who went to the bush with the historical mission of liberating this country.
All right, let's move on to Honorable Simon Mlongo. Honorable Mlongo, I don't know whether you won your village elections. I don't know if you were a candidate. Tell us, did you participate? Did you win? Are you a chairperson of a certain village?
Comrade, I guess was prompting me to say that. But I'm doing work other than elective work, so I'm not participating, and for very good reasons. And in any case, leadership is supposed to be various. Other actors can also come on the stage. But to really say, earlier on I was contesting your ruling about summing up and balance of probabilities and and all this. It's overwhelming that colleagues are applauding NRM, the mighty party, for really conducting its business very well, overwhelmingly across the country. And the president came out with a very strong statement, which you read here when we were starting. Surely, we lead and others follow. There's no doubt about it. And whereas we're not comparable, but we definitely lead and others follow. We have done a lot of audits to our electoral processes. We've learned from our past mistakes, and we've made a lot of improvements. I want to tell you that the register was updated 3 times in these recent exercises. Because of some mistakes that we saw, we had to send them back. Digitization was the last, and digitization was done twice to make the register as more reliable as possible. So you just want to tell my colleague
Does it still have more voters than the Electoral Commission has?
There are some instances where we have had to equalize, but there are areas where we have some excess than the Electoral Commission, and for some good reasons, because the parameters were not the same. For us, we're looking at those who will be of age as at that time. The Electoral Commission was a bit sticky with their approaches. And yes, our way of approach of things is different from the government and Electoral Commission, because that one, as an institution, is more independent. They have their own institutions and so on. So they decide how to carry out the elections. So I want to congratulate my people for having really gone through, and sorry for any isolated instances, and which I believe must be responded to. And congratulations to Uganda and to NRM.
You just had fewer deaths than
No, that's the exaggeration.
All right, gentlemen, now, I don't know if we have any Catholics here today, and I want us to end by reflecting on the fact that we have a new Pope, the first American Pope in so many decades. He chose the name of Pope Leo the 14th. This comes merely a few weeks after the passing on of Pope Francis, who visited this country before. And matters of faith are very critical in this country. Let me begin with the Catholic, Ronald Egesa. What does this mean for you?
By the way, my other name is Leonard.
Leonard.
Yeah. Yeah, so, of course, it's a new dawn for the Catholic Church. I actually wanted to be a priest. Yeah, but of course I changed my mind at a certain point. Yeah, all right. So, of course, people were expecting certain front runners, and his name was not among those the front runners that had been identified by various commentators. But then, of course, it surprised many. The church, of course, is going through its own trying times. They have to deal with the realities that issues of faith have dwindled in Europe. And of course the strength of the church now is in Africa, Asia and Latin America. So with the late Pope, who has just passed on, having come from Latin America, you see even the new one, we are looking at him as American simply because he's American by birth, but he's in reality he's more of a Latin American. And I want to believe that that one of the reasons why when the cardinal electors in the conclave zeroed in on him, of course they had to consider his roots in the Latin American church, which has a very big number of Catholics around the world. So I think that's an issue they were dealing with. But then on a lighter note, there are people who are advocating, for example, for Robert Cardinal Sarah. A very good writer. I've read a number of his books. One of his books, actually, I'll recommend it to my colleagues here. It is called The Power of Silence Against the Dictatorship of Noise. It's one of the best reads you'll ever come across. The Power of Silence Against the Dictatorship of Noise. Robert Cardinal Sarah was a very popular candidate, surprisingly, in Europe and North America, but he couldn't make it. And why I'm saying this lightly is because I was asking myself, if you have a black pope, but then there was a narrative created of a black devil, how does that come across? But then, of course, maybe the time will come for us to have a platform.
They were there in the Sistine Chapel, a number of cardinals from Africa, and they had almost the same chances like all those who entered in.
But remember that the Vatican itself has more cardinals than any other continent. There are cardinals who are resident in the Vatican, and they are cardinal electors.
Holding superior offices.
Exactly, and they are cardinal electors. So there is no way you can talk of the number of cardinals in Africa making a significant influence on tilting the vote. Even Asia, however big Asia is or not,
they have a fewer cardinals.
And then also the fact that those cardinals resident in the Vatican, most of them come from Latin America and Italy.
Or Italy itself.
Yeah. So you look at the relations between Italy, Spain, France, the core Catholic constituency in Europe, and their association with Latin America and their influence in Latin America of the Spanish, the Portuguese, and the Italians. It shows you why the numbers are always favoring people with either Italian or Latin American roots. For me, that's how I read the whole situation and why we came up with the pontiff that we have.
Mr. Robert Chirenga.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think as a proud Catholic, I would like to congratulate the new Pope Leo. And my prayer and request is that he follows the footsteps of his predecessor, the late Pope Francis, in advocating for the marginalized, the vulnerable, and the poor, and of course the oppressed and victims of violence, and also have tolerance in this world of ours that is heavily divided and with conflict.
Do you want to talk about the process that led us to his election, or you belong to? I heard today at Lubaga Cathedral, the Archbishop there saying that this is dogma. Once it's done, it's done. You can't discuss anything beyond that, and begin wishing a pope has been chosen.
That's the Catholic doctrine, and that's how it is. So we have a new pope, and that's how we should look at it. The manner in which he came into being elected, that's not for us.
You don't question?
No, I don't question.
But I think he needs to remember that the modern state draws a lot of inspiration from the organization, the bureaucratic organization of the Catholic
and
Church.
Rigidity.
Yeah, and the rigidity of the Catholic Church. Yeah,
that's the reason why it still exists. Had in the Catholic Church not to be as rigid as it is, it will not be
so
there.
that many things.
That rigidity might mean so many things, like Honorable Bloko said. Let's hear from Honorable Paul Mwiri.
Well, I want as well to congratulate the new Pope, but I want to leave a teaser. We see we're talking about the Western spirituality, and we make no mention of the African spirituality. When Leonard was talking there, I was showing that actually this is a Latin America thing. From the look of things, when you look at the number, they tell their story, and we wish them well. But I think we need to have some more African theologists writing about the African theology, because at least I'm alive to the fact that before we were colonized, there were people here who believed in God. Here, the Bible didn't bring God to Africa. God existed, and we had been created in God's image. We left our story, we told their story, and we have been made to think that whatever is African is Tanic. So I call upon the debate to start. I saw Putin clearly was saying, look, in as far as he said, God created African people first in the Kemet. You understand? We need to see the African theology. So that we really understand, because there has been you see, there has been some questions. You know, I've had a discussion group where people tend to say that, you see, I have seen many people live here, go to pay tribute to places far away, to actually attach that spiritual heritage to distant places like Vatican, Mecca, but not because the question still lingers in my mind. Why should my spiritual heritage be attached to distant places? And even believe that actually Jesus, who died 3,000 years ago, 3,000 kilometers away from me, who did not mean died for my sins. Why should I have an attachment to my spiritual, to my belonging where I hail from? You understand? That discussion must start. And
But
our
the
African
previous
theorists,
speaker paid homage to Nenda Hills.
yes, yes, and actually, I come from the same clan with her. We hail from Nenda. That's what we devised Segaga. And whether knowing or unknowing, I saw she was being bashed by a number of people because she paid the homage to the place where we hail from.
All right.
But when people go, like if you attach your spiritual health to a distant place, it is fine. It is very okay.
All right. Very
when
quickly.
you attach it to where you hail from, it is stunning.
All right. Let's
So
hear.
we need a debate in that direction.
All right. Let's hear the comment of Honorable.
Yes, I also want to add my voice to congratulate the new Pope, and also to be thankful that since 1978, when we had the first change, the Pope to come from outside Italy. For 455 years, we did not have a Pope coming outside Italy. And we have about...
North African popes.
Yeah, but there have been
Earlier
two North African popes, yes, but they are more or less on the other side. I also think it is time for Africa to position itself, because let's go to where numbers are. Numbers are in Central America, but they're also in Africa. And so it is time, and we hope more cardinals are going to be appointed in Africa to have the numbers.
All right. I must thank you, dear panelists, for making time to actually be here for this discussion, and thank the listeners who followed from the start and also contributed to this discussion. Your views helped us to shape the discussion here in studio. Well, I've been your host, Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, and from me and the team here in studio, we wish you a good weekend, but stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90 for more quality programming.